Matt Nelson, welcome to the Sport Profile.
Hey man, thanks again for having me. Great to be here on a fine Monday morning.
Way to start the day. Summer's unfortunately winding down, but I know you've been active, throughout the summer. But for people who don't know you, let's start with an elevator pitch. What would you say to people who don't know who Matt Nelson is? And tell us a little bit more about what you do as a public address announcer.
Like you mentioned, I am a live sports announcer. I also work in the commercial and narration industries, providing quality voiceovers for companies looking to promote their services. And since I formed my LLC back in the end of 2023, I've kind of made this into more of a business as opposed to a side hustle. Even though sports announcing doesn't pay the bills, it's not supposed to for like 99% of us. It's something that I'm very passionate about. I love doing, especially since I transitioned over from the play-by-play side of the microphone several years back. So I'm a guy trying to basically live a life on a microphone. I'm all about the heart and hustle. Yeah, that's basically me in a nutshell.
I love that, dude. And it's true. Like you wear your heart on your sleeve. Anybody who knows you will say that. And you're obviously extremely passionate about what you do, which is awesome. And the thing about being a PA announcer is not many people know the PA announcers at their certain events. So tell us a little bit about who you work for. I know you're wearing your FDU shirt, and they're a big client of yours.
Yeah, man. So nowadays, you can probably find me in a lot of different parts of the New York Metro and Central New Jersey areas. So I'm currently the voice of Westchester Soccer Club in USL League One. We're an expansion team based out of obviously Westchester County, New York. I'm also the voice of Real Central New Jersey Soccer, where I'm also their DJ, their on-field host, and a bunch of other things that I got to do pre-game and post-game. They are currently considered pre-professional, which is for those who may not be
What
familiar.
league are they in again? I always
So
forget.
yeah, so right now we're in USL two and WPSL, so
That's what I
pre-professional
thought. I
soccer.
I figured they were a USL club.
Yeah, but we'll be in WPSL Pro in about 2 years' time, which would make us a full season soccer club. So your typical spring through fall type schedule.
Hmm.
Geez, who else am I with? I am I'm the voice of New Jersey United Athletic Club. They too are pre-professional in the NPSL, the National Premier Soccer League. College level, I do stuff with FDU, Fairleigh Dickinson, primarily basketball and volleyball. Columbia, I do wrestling and I fill in for some other sports here and there if they're short on staff. And then at St. Thomas Aquinas College, I do their spring collegiate football. I do both volleyball teams and baseball.
How do you handle the overlaps? Because there's so many, sports going on at the same time.
You got to figure out exactly what your priorities are.
Sure.
Anyone who's done this long enough needs to understand that if you're working with a professional soccer club and a college level club at the same time, you got to understand that there are certain times where you have to put one in front of the other.
Yeah.
There are certain instances where I may put Stack ahead of FDU. Say, for example, if they've got a football game on a Friday night, I may prioritize that over a volleyball game. Or if I know that they're both going to be playing on both Friday and Saturday, I may split up my time between the two to ensure that I give each of those clients the time that they deserve. And that
Totally.
way I'm not missing out on more games than I should be.
Totally.
One thing that PA announcers need to understand, or for people who are trying to get into this part of sports, you got to be flexible, you got to be available. So weeknights, weekends, if you have nothing going on, you're expected to be with that client if they're hosting a game.
Right. No, and that makes sense. It's interesting you say that. Um, it's interesting you say how you have to be so flexible, which is obvious. Um, has there ever been a time where I guess like you had a hard time deciding what to go to?
You know, I had, like I was saying before, where you have like FDU and Stack playing on the same day. Um, it took me a little bit of time to like figure out, and I had to talk to myself about this multiple times. How do I balance this out?
Right.
So I treat that part as more of a business than I just do like a side hustle or a hobby.
Totally.
So nowadays, I don't really feel like those conflicts are difficult to come by when it comes to like, okay, who do I pit over the pedestal over the other person? Um, but like several years ago, when I got the Globetrotters gig, I was in the early stages of dating someone, but at the same time, it's like I wasn't sure how this was going to impact the rest of my, time in sports. But
Yeah.
um, I initially turned them down, but then I had, conversations with some other folks, and they're like, "You turn this down, you're out of your, bleepity bleep mind," so to speak. So um, I realized, back then that okay, this could, ultimately change my life and open doors that I would never anticipate.
Right.
So back then, I think things were much more difficult because of how early I was in my announcing career. Nowadays, unless it's like a really unique opportunity that could lead to like more work down the line, I don't really see conflicts as a bit of an issue for me. Not
No, that
nowadays.
makes sense. That makes sense. I'm really fascinated by this about people's first foray into the public address announcing space. I know you mentioned, you did play by play for a little bit, which is more, still behind the mic, but a little bit in front of the camera. But public address announcers, not many people know who they are. People go to games, and I can only imagine a handful of people know who the public address announcer is for their favorite college or even pro team.
Yeah, the better
So what
question
was
is, what do we look like? That's the bigger question, right? Because you just know what that person sounds like by the style of their voice and their
right?
inflection. You don't know what they look like and what, like how tall they are, or if they're black or they're white, or they're not from this country. But yeah, I mean, people kind of like know what I look like, especially if I'm working with them, alongside a scores table or in a control room or a press box.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, so when I first got into public address announcing, it was during a very unusual time in my life. I had been doing play by play, I want to say for about 4 years, not including my days in college.
Hmm.
And it was about a year, maybe 13 months after my mother got into a car accident.
Oh my God, I'm
And
so
several
sorry.
weeks later, we found out that the accident actually led to her having stage 4 brain cancer.
I'm
22
so sorry,
months,
dude.
and I went through so much garbage that I never thought I would have anticipated, but it also led me to, as I got older, understand a lot more about the people that were going to be a part of my circle.
Yeah.
Some of them are still in there, others not at all. Um, but I want to say about 9 to 10 months before she passed away, I was speaking with one of my clients. I used to do some work at Division II Felician up in Rutherford, back when Mark Mentone was in charge of sports information. And he pointed me to a guy that I think a lot of PA announcers and folks who work in the upper echelons of the sports industry probably know. His name is Mark Frado. Nowadays, you could probably hear his voice at Wizards, Commanders games. He still does NYCFC nowadays and a lot of boxing as well. But as a day job, so to speak, he owns his own production company, Liniker Media. And part of what they do is not only do they produce all these sporting events up and down the East Coast, but he helps people get freelance work, full-time and part-time work, regardless of what positions you're looking to obtain in sports.
I'm on the list myself.
What was that?
I'm on the list myself.
And I believe you know who to thank because of that.
Yes, I do.
So
Matt Nelson himself.
Yeah, so I did some research on the company and what they do. I watched some of Mark's videos on his website, and he offers his listserv for a very low yearly fee, very affordable. So I joined, and I don't recall how long it was after I joined, but I got an email from him courtesy of St. Peter's University. Their women's basketball team was looking for someone to fill in for a game right before the new year. So this was like December 2016. I had nothing going on. So instead of reaching out via email, I picked up the phone and called Hamilton Cook, who used to be in charge of sports information there.
Oh, he used to be at St. Peter's?
He used to be, but now he's like a Mac.
I love Hamilton.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
Dude,
man.
he's the
really
the
dude.
best.
So I picked up the phone and called him, introduced myself, let him know who I was, let him know that I was interested. And, I'm like, is this opening still available? He's like, yeah, it's yours if you want it. So I went into that game having never done it before, but having somewhat of an idea of what the purpose serves for,
Right.
its position. And I got to meet some really good and interesting and cool people along the way.
Yeah.
Some of them definitely helped me get a better idea of what to say and what not to say as a PA announcer. But the Peacocks offered me a few more games on a fill-in basis here and there that season. And then, so now we're in 2017. I started doing a little bit more of it. So I branched out to like other areas outside of the NYC metro area. I drove like all the way out to Lafayette to do games at like $60 a pop. But then my mother passed away.
I'm so sorry.
Things got really ugly 6 weeks prior. I don't want to go into full story, but long story short, I just felt like the more I was doing it, the more it started to become my niche in sports. And so I was working summer collegiate ball. I believe it was the summer of 2018, the Ocean Gulls down in the Atlantic Collegiate Baseball League, the ACBL. They had a team or two down in the Jersey Shore area. And I remember working a game one day, and one of our players comes up to me. He's like, Matt, you're really, really good at this. You can do this for a long time. And it got me thinking at that point that, okay, this is going to become what I choose to do in the sports industry long term, not sports broadcasting. So fast forward, I believe it was either on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, I got a random phone call. I don't remember who the company was. They somehow found my website and they were looking to put it on a national web search. I'm at first I'm thinking to myself, this isn't a hack, is it? Like,
I was going to say,
take advantage of me.
I was going to
There
say,
was a fee that I had to, pay in order to join this, and
it has hack written all over it.
that's what most people would think. But I thought about it for a sec. I'm like, I've only been doing this for 2 years.
Right.
Not on a full-time seasonal basis at the time, but fast forward several days or weeks later, I get another phone call. Dude was calling me out of the Phoenix area. Introduces himself as Zoltan Berensky, who was and I believe he still is, the producer of the Globetrotters. He's like, hey man, we found your stuff online. We think you're really good, and we wanted to know if you were interested in coming on tour with us. I'm like, Okay, first question I have for you is how in the world did you find me?
Yeah.
One word answer, YouTube.
Really?
So it didn't occur to me until after that phone call that like I took it upon myself to put myself in that position, and it's like, okay, we're going on tour during basketball season.
That's so
Goodbye day job.
cool.
Goodbye day job for now, and go
What
spend
what
six
was the
months
day job
touring
at
the
the
U.S.
time?
Oh, I was working for Amazon.
Nice. So you're well established in the industry now, and you just got back from this public address announcers conference down in North Carolina, I think it was.
Yeah, it was Burlington.
I had never I had never heard of a public address announcers conference before. I didn't know this was a thing. I mean, what was it like? What were the vibes? Like, what did you learn? Like, that sounds awesome,
Yeah,
especially for people in
so
your position.
yeah, I think the unique part of it was that it was set up in a very popular part of North Carolina where college basketball is like the biggest thing on the planet for them.
Yeah,
So it was set up by the voice of Duke men's basketball, Trip Durham. He wanted to basically establish a networking way for public address announcers to come together for like 3 days and have us connect with one another, regardless of how many years we have been doing this. And there were also some folks from like other like management parts of sports that are like
sure.
decision makers and work side by side with their respective PA announcers. Um, it was just a really fun time in a very hot area.
Dude, that's great.
And I mean that literally because I had never experienced Carolina heat before. Like when I tell you, when I was walking around Duke and like exploring some of the athletic fields, when it was 90 degrees there, it felt like over 100. Where here in Jersey, 90 can mean like 92 or 95 in the heat index.
Yeah. No, that's valid. It's yeah, the feels like temperature is always like 10 degrees hotter down there.
Yeah.
Did that inspire you to start your own event? I know you have one coming up, and curious if you want to, plug it in.
So first of all, that event was supposed to be back in April, but it was initially scheduled for a Monday, and I had like one person and one person only sign up for it. The chamber and I that I'm a part of, we were trying to determine if it was worth keeping it on the calendar or postponing it for a later time so that I can give myself even more time to finalize the number of people that would be attending. So, no, I had thought about doing this a while back. So now that I have a new date set in stone, I will be hosting an in-person / online event to learn a little bit about the voiceover industry from a business perspective. And by that I mean, like, how can voiceover help businesses succeed in ways that they had never thought of, right?
Right.
So I'm going to discuss like the difference between having voiceover, whether it's the unfortunate elephant in the room that I don't even have to say out loud, to using someone like internally as opposed to using a professionally trained voice actor. We're also going to discuss like how to go about rates when you have a voiceover project in mind and you're ready to have that sit down conversation with the voice actor so that they can learn more about the project, where it's going to land, how long is it going to air, what platforms is it on. There's so many questions that voice actors need to know about before they can decide like, okay, is this project worth going after, or is the rate not good enough for me even if I try to negotiate, and
Right.
okay, it's not worth it at the end of the day.
No, that makes sense. That's awesome. It's September 10th.
September 11th, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Um, like I mentioned, there is an option to either, come to the Woodbridge Chamber office in person. They have their own little meeting area, if you would, in the office that they're located. And if obviously you can't, come to Jersey, or you got like other, something else on your calendar, then you can obviously attend virtually, and we'll send you a Zoom link on the day of.
That's awesome. I'm signed up. I'm signed up. I'm really looking forward to it. So super excited to learn from you more than I already have
And you're
learned from
also
you.
local, so it helps that we already have one person signed up who's actually going to come to the office to
Yes,
not only see me again, but also meet other members of the Woodbridge Chamber.
100%. So something I also wanted to ask you about is, you have such a vibrant social media presence within the voiceover industry, um, but also within the autism community. You have your hashtag autistic VO that you put on every post, and I love it. I think the work that you're doing in that space is awesome too, and I'm curious, like what's inspired you to really be so open about it? And I know it's a big part of your life, and I'm just curious, like if you want to share, like what has inspired you to be so open about that part of your life?
No one was very open with me about it growing up. And
Sure.
that's the sad part of a lot of autistic and neurodivergent people who don't know that they have this disability that makes them awkward or different, because their needs are obviously very different from non autistic individuals.
Yeah.
So the way I found out about it was very unusual. Um,
Found out about your diagnosis, or
yeah, yeah. So I
got it.
was a junior in college, my first year at Rowan. I was living in a three-story townhouse. And on move-in day, one of my roommates, I found out from his parents that he too was on the spectrum.
Hmm.
I believe he was a freshman, and freshmen were not allowed to live in townhouses at the time. I don't know if that rule has changed since then. They were supposed to be in their own freshman dorms.
I was gonna say.
So he obviously had some sort of permission, I guess you could say, to stay in a quieter living situation, so to speak.
Sure.
So him and I were on the same floor, so I knew that there were going to be some things about him that I've never necessarily seen from other people I've interacted with in years past. But I remember that very first semester, I was just having a hard time getting acclimated to living away from home, living in an area and a space that I wasn't very acclimating towards.
Sure.
And so one weekend, my parents and my sister came down for a visit. And it was early during their time with me that they happened to meet this other roommate of mine. And they realized within seconds that there was something a little off or unusual about him. And so my sister and I are in our bedroom, and she looks at me and she goes, "Well, Matt, you know you have autism too, right?" And I'm looking at her and I'm like, I'm so bewildered because
So wild
I
comment
had,
to say.
yeah, like, why is this up now? And then I look at my parents, and they were under the assumption that I was aware of this. They thought they told me. I'm like, nope, this is the first time you're bringing this up to me. And my father is like, come on, guys, I think we need to give Matt some space. So
It's a very that sounds like an intervention.
I didn't realize this until years later, but the very next day, they came back with my grandparents and my mom's side in an attempt to get my mind off the news that I had just been given. Um, had I replayed that day after again, I would have approached that very differently. It didn't give me enough time to process that information because, yes, I had been in special ed and I had needed in-class support when I was in grade school.
Sure.
But I guess back then I never really knew why, as the older I got, the less number of friends I had in my circle. And so I've kind of gone through life with very little to no friends whatsoever. And as I got older, I started, being a little bit more active on Twitter. And then I think a month before Autism Awareness Acceptance Month in 2022, I went through this new phase where I started looking up and then becoming like Twitter friends with members from the autistic community. I also went to the barber and asked them to shave my head. The barber had no idea what I was up to because I used to have a full head of hair, not curly like you. I was more of like a brown color haired guy before,
Yeah.
But it was just a very unique time. And then one of my former colleagues that I used to work with at the Metropolitan Riveters, him and I met up at a Somerset Patriots game that same year, and he gave me a gift. He's a diehard Devils fan. The Devils supposedly had like an autism acceptance night, so he bought a shirt, gave it to me. I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. I put that on all of my social media channels, minus LinkedIn, and I think that opened up a lot of people's eyes to the point where it's like, wait a second, Matt's coming out with this information now? That led to several months of getting questioned by my extended relatives and a former close friend of mine. Ultimately, I'm in these situations that I've never been in before, and I felt like I was being put on the spot. I had no idea how to answer their questions. And I learned a lot more about myself and like what's considered a trigger, what's considered like a sensory issue or a sensory need for me. And it just got me to learn a lot more about the people that were meant to be in my circle.
So
Go ahead.
So I'm understanding this correctly. The way you're communicating this, it's kind of giving the impression that everybody in your circle knew about this except for you, and they're all assuming that, or I don't know if assuming is the right word, but like thinking that you already knew that you were autistic.
Yeah.
Is my understanding correct there?
Yeah. Granted, I was 20 years old or so at the time when I found out.
Right.
But you then, fast forward 12 years later to when I was about like 31, 32 years old. I started just like going through these transitions and realizing like, holy crap, like autism is actually a part of my life. And so interacting with all these autistic individuals on social media that, don't really put themselves out in the open, outside of wherever it is they live, it just opened up my mind to a world that I had never knew was out there before. People who share similar experiences of being misunderstood, people who are, constantly discouraged, demoralized. I have been through a lot of those situations where people are simply like not in my circle. They
Sure.
don't know why I am the way I am. They don't know. They don't understand the industry that I'm in, and I look back and I'm like, well, you don't want to understand. You don't have to be a part of my life or my circle anymore, and it's made me a better person. Learning how to mask, learning how to unmask, and all these different autistic characteristics that people have that are,
Sure.
community of mine. So,
How would you say being autistic, and how would you say your values there play into your roles as a public address announcer, if they do at all?
sometimes I may not hear like a piece of communication that's being directed towards me. May not hear it as accurately the first time. So
Sure.
one thing I learned how to do is get some like extra clarification to make sure that I'm on the same page with them. Especially if it's a gig like FDU basketball where I'm always on headset communicating back and forth with my marketing graduate assistants for like what's coming up. Um, so there is that. One thing I will say, and it's something I brought up to a local networking group of mine not all that long ago, is that, you know, every now and then I experience autistic meltdowns, but I don't, I probably don't experience them as much as others simply because I've kind of learned to control certain things about me.
Sure.
Granted, there are some occasions where if I sense that the sarcasm or the joke or the humor just doesn't sit well with me, or maybe I don't get the humor or the sarcasm, I'm gonna be like, "Yep, that wasn't funny." It's just
Yeah, just got to be
it's
blunt
just
like
the way
that.
it's just the way my brain processes the information.
I know those scenarios very well, very very well. But I really appreciate you being so open about that, and it's a blessing that you are, and you know we need more people like you to do that and be open. So, Matt, there's one question I do ask everybody on the show, and that is, professionalism aside, just you, Matt Nelson, as a person, what do you like most or admire about yourself?
Oh boy. um, I like that there are people out there who respect me for who I am as opposed to what I'm not. Even if they've got like other priorities going on their end, you know. Sometimes it's hard to, realize that. Other times it's easy. I'm like, okay, they're busy. They're in a sense of chaotic mind right now. I just like the fact that I'm always, learning more about myself and the work that I do. Even as a voice actor, just trying to get myself more so into that business than, I did like 2 years ago when I was trying to start out, but, work got in the way. So just trying to learn and improve and learn about what works for me and what doesn't is basically something that I like about myself, even on the days where I, don't feel like doing the stuff that I need to do.
That's amazing, man. It's super inspiring to hear that. It's really exciting to hear your story, and I echo those similar sentiments. I mean, I always see you grinding, and I always see you going to different events and really pushing yourself in the right directions to improve your career and improve your lifestyle. So I commend you for that. But thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate your time, dude. It's great to catch up.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. I will see you in person real soon.